Why you wouldn't survive The Walking Dead? Immediately, let me know down in the comments below. Would you guys survive The Walking Dead? Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you haven't already. The Walking Dead is probably one of the most realistic depictions of a zombie apocalypse. I think it's the only, it's like one of the, there's probably some more zombie apocalypse shows out there somewhere, but I feel like The Walking Dead is like the only one that I've ever seen before it being somewhat realistic in terms of the mental strain that these characters go through, the situations. The only person who really has armor on is Rick. Besides that, I mean, a zombie apocalypse like The Walking Dead, there are just so many factors that would kill you before you even make it a couple days. You know what I mean? I just recently got done watching, you know, when Negan showed up, spoiler alert, and cracked open both those boys' heads. But whenever I come back to this show, I always see something new or something different, or see something in a different light, or whether it be a decision that characters make or a situation that they end up going through or whatever. But this show is like low-key, this show is kind of deep in a way. It really is. Let me know too if you guys think you guys would survive The Walking Dead. I think I'd make it like maybe a couple weeks, maybe a year, depending on like where I am at the time of outbreak. You know what I mean? The lifestyle that they have to live is just so hardcore and brutal, dude. Like you would think it would be kind of easy, but it would actually just make life way harder. You know what I mean? So let's jump into it, boys.
In the world of The Walking Dead, we see humanity brought to the very brink of extinction by a mysterious disease dubbed the Wildfire virus, wiping out over 99% of the world's population and turning people into flesh-eating monsters referred to in the series as walkers.
Wait, so it's called the Wildfire virus? I never knew that. Zombies don't exist like in the Walking Dead universe in any type of way. And it would make sense because, you know, when you see these people go up against these zombies for the first time, it's like they don't really know what to do until they figure out like, yeah, headshots are the only way, you know.
All sounds very bad on paper. I still think a lot of people watch the series and think, yeah, surviving in this world would be a piece of cake. I'm sure I could morph into a prime Rick Grimes, grab my red-handled machete, and start hacking some slow-moving zombies to death. But I'm here to be the bearer of bad news and tell you, you're very wrong. Because when society collapses, there are far deadlier factors at play than merely just avoiding walker bites. So this is why you...
And think about it, like, there are so many factors. There are people out there who are just going to do anything. There are people that are going to try to keep society the way it was. And then there are those people who are just like, nah, we're going to, you know, we're going to take over this whole world now. Just like how Negan was like with the whole New World Order thing. That's exactly how it would be. You know, you'd come across groups that wouldn't think twice about doing the worst to you. You know what I mean? And at the same time, you got to worry about food. You got to worry about water. There's just so much you have to worry about. And when I was younger, I used to think, oh yeah, like I love a zombie. I wish a zombie apocalypse would happen. My pop would always tell me like, yo, be careful what you wish for, dude. And you know, now when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, dude, like I would never want a zombie apocalypse to happen. You know, it would be terrible, terrible.
Wouldn't survive The Walking Dead. Okay, I know I've just stated that there's more to worry about than just being bitten by a walker, but we must first address the elephant in the room, and that is the flesh-eating reanimated corpses call this universe home. Now, at first glance, any zombie seen in the series post-season 1, I'll admit, would be fairly easy to deal with in isolation. But not only did the series creator Robert Kirkman confirm that the zombies in this universe outnumber the living roughly 5,000 to 1, but I also see people when tackling this hypothetical scenario totally dismiss one crucial fact, and that is the concept of zombie media just doesn't exist in the world of The Walking Dead. I mean, think about it. We've all grown up watching Shaun of the Dead, playing Plants vs Zombies, or binging horror films, and because of this, we are familiar with the fairly universal rules of these undead monsters, i.e. must destroy the brain to kill them, a bite means you're infected, and avoid population-dense areas at all costs. But the people of the Walking Dead universe, with you included if you were dropped into it, would have no idea of these aforementioned zombie rules or even the concept of a zombie itself. It would just be a totally alien concept, decreasing your chances of survival massively. So, let me set the scene for you all. One night, your dad becomes sick with a strange illness, and that night, whilst asleep in your room, you suddenly wake up to the excruciating pain of your own father biting into your arm.
Oh.
But your immediate reaction after waking up would not be to smash your dad's skull in with a lamp and amputate your infected arm, because you wouldn't even understand the sheer severity of the situation.
Right. See, and that's what's like so crazy, right? Like, it just ends just like that. Like, it could all end just like that, and you didn't even get started. Your dad was the first one, and they took you out immediately. That's what I'm saying, bro. This is rough. This is rough.
Was way too late. And I know that example sounds incredibly niche and specific, but this is exactly how millions of people would be caught off guard. When a loved one is burning up with a fever and acting violently, our instincts would be to comfort them, try and calm them down, or call an ambulance, not grab a shotgun and end their existence. And it's this fundamental lack of knowledge that would sweep across the planet, causing the death of millions. Long before many of you could pick up a baseball bat, wrap it in barbed wire, and start strutting around the apocalypse.
Little pig, little pig!
Even if you did somehow manage to survive the initial wave of domestic horror, your survival would still boil largely down to sheer geographical luck. Because if you live in a major city, the odds are already stacked against you. Picture hearing the chaotic news reports of a virus making people uncontrollably violent while you sit alone in a high-rise apartment. You would have no idea what to do in those crucial first few days. Do you fight back against these crazed individuals chasing you down the street, or is there a vaccine on the way that can heal them all? But little do you know, the entire world is already infected and there is no cure coming. And even if you did decide to fight back for your life, how long would it take you to realise that body shots do absolutely nothing against these things, and the only way to stop them is with a direct blow to the brain? My point is, many people would die long before Rick Grimes even woke up from his coma in the series, as they just simply would have no idea what threat they were dealing with.
Yep.
And that's not to mention, even if you did survive the initial days/weeks of the apocalypse, how easy it would be to let your guard down for just a moment and get bitten, or have your camp invaded by a passing horde of the dead. I mean, take Tyrese from the main TV series, for example. A 6-foot-tall, physically capable former NFL player is caught off guard by a singular walker. And later on in the show, we saw this with Carl Grimes as well. Just one lapse of judgment or one wrong turn could mean your end. Add to the fact you'd probably be sleep deprived, starving, and dehydrated, and it makes these mistakes a lot easier to occur. So although the zombies from The Walking Dead might not be clicker level threats, they still possess a very real danger, whether it's from a lack of knowledge, being caught off guard, or the sheer numbers of them.
And I've talked about this before, like it, and he just said it too. Like, it only takes a second of downtime, a zombie sneaks up on you, and you're done. One thing that I'm really interested to know, like, how it feels is like the zombie's resistance when grabbing onto you. How strong is a zombie when they're trying to like grab onto you and like bite you and stuff like that? Like, I wonder, how is it, like they're on crack or something, or is it like they're strong as or something like that? Because if that's the case, then shit, I mean, most people are dead. But if it's like they feel like dead weight, loosey goosey type, it might be a little bit easier to survive. But if they're on crack, then yeah. It's over with.
Roaming around. But hey, at least walkers
Only
are
takes a
somewhat
second,
in your
though.
control.
Only takes a
The
second.
next factor is entirely based on your immune system. Okay, so now we've identified just one of the many threats of surviving in this world, let's look into something that only further decreases your chances of survival. And that is, of course, the wildfire virus itself. So to understand why your immune system is your biggest liability here, we first have to look at how the wildfire virus itself actually operates. And this brings us nicely to one of the biggest plot twists in the entire series, and that is the secret Dr. Jenner whispers to Rick Grimes in season 1, revealing that everybody is infected, including living people. But what does this mean for your survival chances? Well, we all know the virus turns people into flesh-eating monsters and relies on reanimated hosts to pass on the deadly infection via bites. But what people fail to account for, as seen throughout Fear the Walking Dead Season 1, is a huge portion of the world's population flat out died from the virus without being bitten. Now, putting a number on just how many people died from this would be purely speculation, as it's never actually been stated in the series. But we can say with absolute certainty, your immune system might not be able to combat the initial infection in the first place. Essentially meaning no amount of combat training, stockpiling food, or rural living will protect you if you are one of the millions who simply fall sick and die on day one of the apocalypse. Let that sink in. In August of 2010, the virus swept across the globe and infected everybody, laying dormant in billions, and you might just get genetically unlucky. So, your body reacts poorly to the initial pathogen, you run a fatal fever, and you're basically dead before you even realise a zombie apocalypse is happening. And ultimately, this factor is totally out of your control. And there is a very real threat that your immune system wouldn't even let you survive the first 48 hours. On top of this, due to how the virus works, even if you or somebody else dies...
Imagine that. Imagine just dying because you got a fever and burned you out. Like, that would be so annoying. So annoying. Like, you didn't even get a chance to walk around the free world.
Dies from a non-zombie related incident, like a heart attack or infection for example, they will come back as a walker, which is why it's so hard to maintain a community in this environment, because all it takes is one non-walker related fatality and it can cause utter chaos if you're not extremely careful.
Other survivors is a big factor. You would think that everybody would try to band together to fight, you know, the infected or whatever, but no. Other survivors is the reason why most people that have survived the virus will die. Because you got blood-hungry killers, thieves, everything just coming at you.
If you haven't already gathered, there's a huge element of luck that goes into surviving the apocalypse, but things will now get even worse. Let's assume you get genetically lucky, survive the copious amounts of walkers roaming around the streets, and none of your family get infected. Well, now you have to deal with the pleasure of other survivors. Now, I already find dealing with people hard enough in the real world, so now imagine a crazed psycho like the governor who has zero regard for human life and views you purely as an expendable asset, rolling up on you with a tank.
I have a tank.
My point is, we quite clearly see in the series, the biggest threats after the initial fall of society is other people, and walkers quickly become a background hazard. Make no mistake, the post-apocalyptic landscape is an utterly ruthless place, and it's usually the worst of the worst who will survive. The character of Dale sums this up perfectly in Season 2, where he describes this new world as now being survival of the fittest. When supplies are scarce, shelter is limited, and disagreements happen, unfortunately, people will very quickly resort to violence in order to solve disputes and problems. I mean, we even see it in the real world, so when you remove the punishment and consequences of the law, it would basically become the purge on steroids. I think the absolute scariest part of the entire apocalypse would without a doubt be dealing with the other survivors. You let your guard down for 1 second or hesitate and someone else could kill you. You run the constant risk of raiders stealing your supplies and doing much worse, and if your community's resources are getting tight, even your closest allies might decide your share of the food is worth more than your own life. Ultimately, in order to survive, you would have to be incredibly careful of who you let into your group. If you go it alone, you run the risk of being overwhelmed by a larger group, and if you go for the safety in numbers approach, someone you once trusted might betray you. To be brutally honest, I dread to think about all the atrocious acts once sophisticated people would be committing in a now lawless world. Murder, SA, cannibalism, theft, and much more.
God.
Add in layers of deceit, lies, and false hope, and it makes every single person you run into in your post-apocalyptic journey a potential death trap. Oh, and by the way, spoiler alert, you are not Rick Grimes, so you don't have the main character plot armor we see in the series. Just think of all the antagonists you could run into in this world: the termites, the governor, the claimers, the wolves, the whisperers, and the list goes on. And these are only the ones we see on screen, so think what else could be lurking out there. In a world of survival of the fittest where hesitation...
I'm not gonna lie, Walking Dead, it fell off, you know, a little bit after Negan's big entrance. But when it got up to this point, there was an actual group of people who dressed up as like the dead and kind of fought with inside the undead. That was kind of badass. Like I like that. That was cool.
Becomes fatal, it would be brutal, exhausting, and a deeply depressing place to try and exist. And look, of course, I'm not saying every single person would be this evil lunatic, but unfortunately, the vast majority probably would be. And it's the sad, but ultimately realistic truth of human nature. Because when our backs are against the walls, we become desperate, selfish, and loyalties would very quickly go out the window. All it takes is you walking along one day and somebody hiding in the bushes decides they want your stuff, so they're going to kill you for it. Or you hesitate in pulling the trigger, realizing the severity of taking another human life, only to be beaten to it by that other person who shoots you first. Or, even worse, you walk into a settlement under the pretenses they will take you in and look after you, only to find out it's a bunch of cannibals and you're on the menu tonight. At least with walkers, you know what to expect, a mindless pursuit of flesh, as humans are complicated, cunning, and deceitful, making them the most dangerous post-apocalyptic.
That's actually kind of funny. If they're all infected, how did those cannibals not ever turn for eating like the meat, the people? You know? I guess it just didn't work like that or something. I don't know.
Threat you could possibly find.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Now, this next factor plays heavily into your geographical location, which I did touch upon earlier, whilst also kind of linking to the other survivors section, because it's people and the military's reaction to the wildfire virus, particularly in cities across America. In the first few days of the outbreak, local police departments quickly became overwhelmed, hospitals filled up, and riots broke out nationwide. So the military was dispatched into major cities across America, setting up safe zones in strategic areas in order to try and regain control from the undead. This, however, would very quickly prove futile, as after just over a week of trying to retake the cities, morale, supplies, and exhaustion quickly overwhelmed the soldiers, as they not only fought an utterly relentless foe, but were also dramatically outnumbered, with central areas of cities crawling with walkers. But what that means for you is if you were a civilian and you lived in a city across America, you would have to get incredibly lucky to already be living within an area the military fenced off and protected as a quote-unquote safe zone, or you'd be stuck in a living hell. After things went bad, many people tried to exit the cities, in turn blocking up all the highways, making escape for you via vehicle virtually impossible. To make things even worse, the military were ordered to contain the virus, so in turn they shot anything that moved outside of safe zones, whether you were infected or not. So unless you were in one of these military zones, you'd be playing a constant and very deadly game of hide and seek versus the people who were sent in to supposedly save you. Walkers were now everywhere across the cities, and riots of angry survivors plagued the country. Your chances of being stuck in a city and trying to survive outside of a military safe zone would be very slim. But even if you were lucky enough to be in a safe zone, you wouldn't fare much better in the end, as some camps became overrun, but the worst was yet to come. Because after the military realized they weren't going to be able to take back America's cities, they initiated a plan to try and neutralize the virus. In the middle of the night, the military would evacuate their posts and their safe zones, telling no civilians. And only a matter of hours later, before some had even realized their retreat, the city would be bombed with napalm. This top secret mission was dubbed Operation Cobalt, and the only way in Fear the Walking Dead our survivors find out about this classified operation is by literally capturing and torturing a soldier. For many, whilst sound asleep in their supposed safe zones or whilst fighting for their lives outside of them, they would be met by a constant bombardment of bombs. This would not only kill millions of survivors, but also only add to the walker problem, as people subsequently died and reanimated. Operation Cobalt was a colossal military fail and led to the collapse of their control. But this failure meant if you lived in pretty much every city across America except Philadelphia and Portland, who managed to escape this fate, you would almost certainly be killed. As for cities outside of America, like it meant if you lived in pretty much every city across America except Philadelphia and Portland, who managed to escape this fate, you would almost certainly be killed. As for cities outside of America, like Paris, London, and Barcelona, although not bombed, we see they fared incredibly poorly as well due to the sheer density of people. So, in the world of The Walking Dead, just merely existing in a city essentially becomes a death sentence.
With Rick and them, they were in rural areas, so they didn't really have to worry about too much, but you know, they were obviously always getting into situations where they did have to worry about all that. So it would still be dangerous, but they had a lot more open space to work with, you know.
I think often one of the most overlooked challenges within any apocalypse is the mental aspect of it. Let's quickly assume you are within the 1% of survivors, and although the odds aren't in your favour, there is definitely a chance you might survive. While the chances of the people you once loved also being in that 1%, let's just say, are not in your favour. Let's look at Rick Grimes, for example, and just take a second to think about how mentally taxing his journey through the apocalypse was.
Dude.
He lost his wife, his son, countless friends, love interests, and watched Negan.
Rick's transformation, season 1 up to season 7 or whatever, is just, I mean, up to the end. Man, that boy went through so much. That man went through so much, bro. Like, so much. And it's incredible that he was even able to just keep living. The amount of emotion that they convey in this show is like perfect, because you can see how damaged everybody gets. There are like few moments where you see Rick just completely scared out of his mind and just helpless, and those moments are like the heartbreaking moments, because it's like he wants to protect everybody, he wants his family to be safe. There are so many times where Rick and the whole group could have got smacked, you know what I mean? But plot armor.
Bash two of his closest friends' love interests and watch Negan bash to favor. Let's look at Rick Grimes, for example, and just take a second to think about how mentally taxing his journey through the apocalypse was. He lost his wife, his son, countless friends, love interests, and watched Negan bash two of his closest allies' skulls in with a baseball bat. I don't care what anybody says, this is going to have some serious mental repercussions on an individual. And if that isn't enough, let me give you a real-world example. Take PTSD in US soldiers from World War II. Each and every brave soul who fought on that battlefield didn't go into it thinking, yeah, this is definitely going to mentally break me for the rest of my existence.
Right, yeah.
But for many of them, unfortunately, it did. On top of this, cases of PTSD only rose in prisoners of war, with nearly 60% of them coming away from the ordeal with the illness, which just proves the human brain in most cases will just break after witnessing terrifying or highly distressing events, like these soldiers saw in war, or reality check, like you would be seeing in the apocalypse. And watching your family and friends slowly turn into flesh-eating monsters, or seeing them killed in front of your very own eyes, is going to mentally destroy you. I think some people would just flat out opt out of existing in a world like this, and others would let it drive them insane. And whilst yes, we all like to think we'd be Rick Grimes dropping some insanely cold one-liners,
I already made you a promise.
the harsh reality is most of us would more likely resemble a character like Clara from season 4 of the show. A woman who after the death of her husband clings on to survival but is depressed, delirious and all alone, until one day Rick stumbles upon her. She tries to lure Rick back to her camp and use him as food for her reanimated husband in a state of delirium. But after he fights her off, she just asks to be left alone to die. As ugly and depressing as it may sound, most of our brains just aren't geared to witness the type of horrors an apocalypse would throw at them. Many people would break and become unhinged shells of their former selves, resulting in survivors breaking mentally long before they did physically. In the world of The Walking Dead, as
imagine, we just got done talking about almost like a billion different things that you have to worry about, right? In a zombie apocalypse, or in the Walking Dead zombie apocalypse or whatever. And now we're just getting to the resources, all the extra bits that you need to survive. You know what I mean? Like, you're cooked, bro. You're cooked. Like, you're cooked. Thank God. Hopefully we're not living in any sort of apocalyptic time, right?
As soon as the date hit August 27th, known in the universe as Monument Day, a timer essentially begins, as this is the point food and other resources stop being produced, and the longer into the apocalypse you go, the more depleted supplies will become. Now, sure, you could try and grow your own food or hunt and fish, but unless you have some basic knowledge in these areas, you'll probably really struggle. We saw in the real world during a certain 2020 global pandemic how people picked the shops clean, leading to global shortages in certain goods. Well, now imagine the impact a zombie apocalypse would have on people's mindsets. They'd loot, steal, and pick clean everything from supermarkets and pharmacies in the first few hours of the outbreak.
Yeah.
And after Operation Cobalt decimated the cities, just think about how many supplies were burnt to a crisp in the bombings. Survival would very quickly become a daily struggle. The moment the electrical grid fails, water treatment plants would shut down, and the pristine tap water we completely take for granted now would just flat out be gone. If you resorted to drinking from stagnant ponds, lakes, or local rivers without the means to properly purify or boil it, you aren't just quenching your thirst, but you're playing a dangerous game with a plethora of waterborne pathogens every time you take a sip. And in a world with zero operating hospitals and no access to basic antibiotics, even the smallest of sicknesses could become fatal. And then comes the starvation aspect. Most people have absolutely no idea how to grow crops, let alone maintain agricultural land without commercial fertilizers, pesticides, and modern machinery. Your only option would be to scavenge the odd bits of food you could find, and possibly hunt if you had the knowledge and know-how. But as the weeks turn to months, and then possibly years, if you've done really well at keeping yourself alive, the challenge would only further increase. Canned goods would expire, medicine would lose its potency, and gasoline would degrade so much it became basically useless, rendering any vehicles you had essentially worthless. Every single day would become a frantic and exhausting calculation of calories spent versus the calories gained. You are constantly operating on a state of starvation, leaving you weak, dizzy, and prone to fatal mistakes, and on top of this, your search for supplies would often take you to uncharted territories, leaving you at risk of being ambushed by the people who live there, or just having your camp raided in your absence. And finally, without the use of vehicles, you'd have to be physically fit as well to be able to outrun walkers and maybe even other survivors, and your cardio...
Yeah, your cardio has to be on point. You have to have calisthenic strength, okay? I'm not talking like busky ass Hulk strength. Like, you need to have calisthenic strength. You got to be on point 24/8. Imagine having to be on point 24/8. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that.
Cardiovascular endurance would be essential to survival in this environment. In conclusion, although many of us would like to imagine ourselves as this, in reality, most of us would probably look something like that. Because in order to survive the world of The Walking Dead, you'd have to survive a dormant airborne virus on day one, you'd have to guess the correct rules of the undead in a world where zombie media doesn't exist, you'd have to escape firebombed gridlock cities while the military tries to kill you, outsmart the often hostile other survivors, avoid losing your mind from the horrors you'd witness, and somehow find clean water and food every single day.
Every
and the
day.
harsh reality of it is the vast majority of us wouldn't be the heroes of this story. We'd either be part of the infected herds wandering aimlessly through the landscape, or be like Clara, an emotional wreck after the death of our loved ones. Because ultimately, survival in this environment is brutal, and it isn't all about how tough you are, because it mostly boils down to a horrifying mix of genetic luck, geographical positioning, and psychological endurance. And that is why 99% of us just wouldn't survive The Walking Dead. I mean, the numbers from the series don't lie. But who knows, maybe the future Rick Grimes of the apocalypse is watching this very video, and in that case, I apologize for severely underestimating your ability.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Look, I better than anybody understand how easy The Walking Dead may look to survive, and although it's nowhere near the worst apocalypse you could find yourself in fiction, it would still take a colossal effort just to stay alive. But with that being said, let me know down below in the comments how long you think you'd survive the Walking Dead apocalypse. If you enjoyed today's video, please do like, subscribe, and hype the video if you're a mobile, as it helps the channel out a ton, and we are so close to 40,000 subscribers now, which just feels surreal to say. But once again, a huge thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one.
All right.
Goodbye.
Fire, fire, fire. Let me know what you guys thought about that down in the comments below. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you haven't already. Why you wouldn't survive The Walking Dead. Yeah, I mean, The Walking Dead's brutal, bro. And let me know down in the comments below if any of you guys have watched the show or love the show or whatnot. Cause yeah, I always come back to the show every once in a while and just watch it. It's so good, like every time. For the most part, Walking Dead is definitely one of the greatest shows ever, for sure.